first thing I wanted to talk about is the big thing that's been happening was Richard Hart and Elon Musk were together in a Twitter space, and Richard was actually a speaker, and they were side by side in the spaces for a good period of time. And before he could give his opinion on censorship and things like that, Kim.com threw him off the space. It has resulted in a huge controversy. I guess let's really get into it. So you had Richard Hart was a regular on these Mario Naufel and Kim.com. They collaborated for these Twitter spaces. They've been getting a lot of big names. And Richard Hart was a regular. Whenever he came to the space, attendance probably jumped up by like 6,000-7,000 easily, just because of the engagement, the high engagement in the Hex community. And he has a very high percentage of his followers are real and very engaging. So that is really what happened. So he's been doing them a lot of good. And then they got Elon Musk on, and Elon Musk basically was speaking, and they were talking about censorship. And that was really the big opportunity people saw for Richard to give his input and, form some inroad and connections with Elon Musk. And that was really destroyed by Kim.com. So what happened was Richard was obviously upset about it, understandably so. To most people, you are nothing more than something to be tricked into liking, following, and retweeting them. They're similar to trolls, except they want to punk you for engagement more than rage. Starve them, make your own space, be the narrative. So essentially, Richard's saying that, we should not give these people attention. They're not good to me. Why should I be good to them? I've been giving them thousands and thousands of followers. I personally am an example of that. If Richard wasn't in these spaces, I wouldn't be following Kim.com, and I wouldn't be following Mario Naufel. So they've gotten thousands, tens of thousands of followers because of Richard Hart, because of his engagement, because people want to hear what he has to say. And then basically what happened was when Elon Musk came on, he got thrown to the wolves, essentially. So Kim.com explained 3 reasons. He said, joins chat about censorship, gets censored. So Kim.com tweeted, why did Richard Hart delete this tweet? Wasn't he complaining about censorship? And Kim.com said the reasons why he was thrown off. He said, Elon said your fashion taste is terrible. He didn't want to be seen with you, not even on audio. Then he said, I like your eloquence and intellect, but you use every space to promote Hex instead of letting your brilliance shine. Your fashion taste is terrible. Get help. Laughing emojis. Not the nicest response. I think that's really what essentially prompted Richard to do this tweet. So I would say, I guess that's the reason why he deleted the tweet, was because he didn't want to engage with trolls, essentially saying that Kim.com is a troll. So I guess, yeah, this is a good meme over here. You had Richard Hart, Elon Musk, and then Kim.com takes him away. So I guess my take on it is, I don't really know if Kim.com is joking. Is it true that he didn't want to be? Is it true that Elon Musk didn't want to be on the same Twitter spaces as Richard Hart? That is cool in and of itself, that Elon Musk doesn't want to be seen with him, because that means that Elon Musk knows who Richard Hart is, and that's very big. And that just shows you that Hex is emerging. Hex is emerging into that virality, into that mainstream kind of thing, because someone like Elon Musk, as big as Elon Musk, having heard of Richard Hart is already like something big. He didn't want to be seen with him. Maybe that's because he thinks he's a controversial figure. I'm assuming it's not because of his fashion taste. But what's silly about him Elon allegedly and Kim.com saying his fashion taste is terrible, it just shows that these people don't get it. It's not about the fashion. It's about sending a message. It's not about the fashion. It's about sending a message, because until he was doing these fashion things, nobody was paying attention to Richard Hart. Nobody cared. He was raising money for charity. He was writing self-help books. He created a token, a cryptocurrency that did a 10,000x in under 2 years, which is extremely, extremely rare in crypto. Only 3 other cryptos, I think, did it, were able to achieve that, and nobody really paid attention. But then he started doing the outrage marketing. He started doing those silly watches and outfits and things like that, which he on his own admission would say are silly, but it has helped him achieve that mainstream, adoption, that mainstream, clout from these big Twitter accounts and content creators and influencers in the crypto space. So Kim.com does not get it, and he obviously actually thought that the fashion was for the sake of looking fresh, which sometimes it does, I have to admit. But yeah, it is supposed to be outrageous and flashy to an extent, just to attract your attention. And it's what got him on Fox News. I think it's what got him on a lot of these big shows, and it may be what has gotten him on the Kim.com thing. So I guess what I'd say is that he doesn't understand the fashion taste. And Elon Musk, if he didn't want to be seen with Richard because maybe he thinks he's a scammer or whatever, it just goes to show how early you are. Because when it comes to these new technologies, these new innovative technologies, people take them as scams because it's misunderstood. I think people said that the automobile was going to be used for crooks, and people said that the telephone would be used for the mafia and thieves and things like that. And then people said with Bitcoin that it was used for drugs, and it was shady. It was just used for criminals and things like that. But really, it was an amazing technology that emerged that the rest of the world didn't understand. And I think that's really what's happening with Hex. And that's probably why Elon didn't want to be with him. But that's okay. I think the same way he was late with Bitcoin, he will be late to adopt Hex, in my opinion. That's how I really see it playing out. I think just the world doesn't really understand trustless yield, how it could be achieved through blockchain technology. And that's why people just essentially say he's a criminal. And then he said, I like your eloquence and intellect, but you use every space to promote Hex instead of letting your brilliance shine. That is not true. I think he promotes Hex like minimally in these big Twitter spaces. And why does he get that standard? I see Charles Hoskinson in these Twitter spaces. He mentions Cardano from time to time. I would say probably even less frequently than Richard Hart, but nobody cares. And same thing with Ethereum, with Vitalik and Ethereum. Like, when you're the founder of a cryptocurrency project and you're talking about crypto and you're comparing various cryptos to each other, you're inevitably going to mention your crypto. And you can't disaggregate Richard Hart from Hex. And he's basically saying not to talk about it, which means he's kind of a gatekeeper, I guess. He's essentially gatekeeping. It's not like Richard is just annoyingly repetitively saying, oh, hex.com, go buy Hex. Hex is the best. Like, he's not doing that. He happens to mention it, and that's because he's the founder, and that's because you're on the topic of cryptocurrency. And that's what Kim.com is saying is simply not true. He's not grateful. And this could potentially lead to Richard Hart not entering his spaces, which will lead to considerably less engagement on Twitter. Because if we really know what's up, if you really understand followers, Kim.com doesn't have nearly the amount of followers as Richard Hart. Because yeah, he has 1 million compared to Richard Hart's, almost 300,000, but most of them do not engage. Most of them are not, they're not real. I mean, maybe they just happened to click the follow button like years ago, whatever. You just look at likes and retweets to Kim.com's average tweet or Mario Naufel's average tweet and compare that to Richard Hart, it's not even close. So if Richard wouldn't be going on his Twitter spaces, that would be very bad for Kim.com and Mario Naufel. So I guess the question is, does that mean Richard Hart should not go on his Twitter spaces? Should Richard Hart stop going on the Twitter spaces? I say no. I say he should still go on because they do have big followings. They do bring in huge names. I think I've never seen Richard get so much exposure to such big names so often as he has in these Twitter spaces. And I haven't seen him get so many followers in such a short period of time as when he started going into these spaces. So while, yes, you could even argue that Richard benefits Kim.com and Naufel spaces more than Nowful and Kim.com benefit Richard Hart, I think it is mutually beneficial ultimately. Perhaps Kim.com should apologize, and Nowful should apologize. Perhaps maybe Richard should give them a timeout sort of thing, and maybe come back, maybe let them see what it's like not having him in the spaces, and make them want him back and make them essentially beg him to come back, maybe that sort of thing, just to show them that he should get the respect he deserves. But I would hope, I mean, this is my opinion, Richard, maybe he's if he doesn't want to go back, it's probably for a reason, because he's had a good track record. But I do think it's important not to just isolate yourself. I think you should be interacting with other big content creators. I remember when he first got on these big spaces, I don't know if it was the first time, but it was when he got in these big spaces after FTX went down, and everyone was giving him credit for being right. He got like a good 30,000 followers in like a very, very, very short period of time. So these spaces have been huge. I think that's really the best way to get followers, because when you're engaging in your own space, or you're engaging in a live stream, you're really mainly talking to your audience, which is important, but it doesn't get your name out there as much as these big spaces where you have these huge names with their audience in there who've never heard of Hex, who never heard of Pulsechain, PulseX, who never heard of these great truths in crypto that Richard Hart reveals. And they find his points to be very profound and insightful, and they end up following him and perhaps getting Hex because of that. So I think it was very, very tragic what happened yesterday. I think it was very inappropriate and it was very ungrateful, but I think ultimately you got to cross over audiences, in my opinion, obviously, but that's just the way I see it. But I guess that's really enough for that. We got 31 watching. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to really to watch this show. Please, if you're enjoying, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and then go to the description and just please give me your email, so I could stay in touch with you, because obviously this is not my platform, and just in case something happens, I don't have to start from scratch. So I'd really, really appreciate that.